Good afternoon. Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. 2-2-22. How about that? Baseball is a numbers game. My second video on this book that I wrote. Examining the achievements and stats of Baseball Hall of Fame players. My first video on this topic covered the prologue, 6 chapters. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. I'm going to go to chapter 7. I'm going to cover this book as best as I can. See what you think. Just to recap, I'll go to the table of contents. I have 84 chapters on baseball is a numbers game. Chapter 1, love the game. Chapter 2, what if total hits record. Check out my video titled Number 1 on baseball is a numbers game 1. You'll see what I talked about. Chapter 2, what if total hits record. Chapter 3, what if total bases record. Chapter 4, what if total home run record. Chapter 5, what if total runs batted in record. Chapter 6, what if total runs scored record. This video I'm doing now, it's episode 330. I'm going to cover chapters 7 through 21, okay? Very briefly. I don't want to bore you guys. Chapter 7, fastest players to 3,000 hits. You know who the fastest was? How many games did it take for a certain ball player who's in the Hall of Fame to get 3,000 hits? Ty Cobb, 2,135 games. He got his 3,000th hit. He averaged 177 hits a year for his career in 24 years. How about that? Second fastest player, Cap Hansen. Third, Nap Lajoie. Fourth, Tony Gwynn. I saw him play. 5, Stan Musial. And I list, there are 26 baseball players in the Hall of Fame who have gotten 3,000 hits. And I list 1 through 26, the fastest to 3,000. Again, Ty Cobb was number 1. Camp Hansen, Nap Lajoie, Tony Gwynn, Stan Musial. If you want to see the rest, got to buy the book. Baseball is a numbers game. All right, chapter 8. I do something unique, I think. Who are the best hitters between certain decades? And I go from 1870 to the present. And each chapter divides the decade and the players who got the most hits, most runs batted in, and the highest batting average in the decade. And they're in the Hall of Fame. This book is mainly dealing with Hall of Fame players, no present day players, and no, because their careers are still going. We don't have all their stats. And no players who cheated, indicating like steroids. We're not sure how authentic the record is because of steroids, so I don't include them. Like I said, this book focuses on Hall of Fame players, but I make one exception, Pete Rose. I think he should be in, so I include his stats because they're incredible. Okay, chapter 8, best hitters between 1870 and 1879. So I go 10 years, and I go chapter by chapter of each decade. Who was the best hitter between 1870 and 1879 who's in the Hall of Fame? Jim O'Rourke. And then there are 4 others. Got to get the book if you want to find it out. Chapter 9, best hitter between 1880 and 1889. Who is number 1? Camp Hansen. Chapter 10, best hitters between 1890 and 1899. Who was the best hitter? Ed Delante. Chapter 11, best hitters between 1900 and 1909. Who wins it? Honus Wagner. Chapter 12, best hitters between 1910 and 1919. Who got the most hits? Ty Cobb. Chapter 13, best hitters between 1920 and 1929. Who won that decade? Roger Hornsby. Chapter 14, best hitters 1930 to 1939. Who wins it? Paul Wainer. Chapter 15, best hitters between 1940 and 1949. This is a surprise. A lot of players were in the military, so they didn't win the decade. But other players played the entire decade. Hall of Famer. Who wins it? Lou Bargeron. Boudreau. 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 Lou Boudreau, Hall of Famer, wins it. Best hitter 1950 to 1959. Stan Musial, Chapter 16. Chapter 17. Best hitters between 1960 and 1969. Who wins it? Roberto Clemente. Chapter 18, best hitters between 1970 and 1979. Who wins it? Pete Rose. Chapter 19, best hitters between 1980 and 1989. This is a surprise to me. Robin Yount. Chapter 20, best hitters between 1900 and 1999. Craig Biggio beats out Tony Gwynn by, in that decade, Craig Biggio had 1,728 hits. Tony Gwynn had 1,713. So that's a difference of 15 hits. Just squeaked it by. Nice going, Craig. And then Chapter 21, best hitters between 2000 and 2016. I could have gone 2010, but there's no point in doing a decade from 2010 to 2020 because the last 5 years in that decade, players are not elected to the Hall of Fame yet. It takes 5 years to get in after you retire. So I combined that decade and said 2000 to 2016. Who was the best hitter during that time who's in the Hall of Fame? Derek Jeter. Okay. So in my Baseball Hall of Fame critique and examining the achievements and stats of baseball players, my goal is to see who outperformed and who was better than his other companions in the hall. You understand what I mean? Who played better? Who got better stats? Who achieved greater success? That's what my focus on is in this book. A lot of fun doing it. It was a lot of research. I looked at all the numbers. So I thought you'd be interested in this video that if you want to know who were the best hitters in a certain decade, I lay it all out. See, if you look, you can see I have charts. And I have the guy who got the most hits, the most runs batted in, the highest batting average. Who had the highest batting average between 1870 and 2016? You should know that one. Hugh Duffy, 440. Who had the highest runs batted in from 1870 to 2016? Who was number one? You should know that. You know who it was? Who had the most runs batted in between 1870 and 2016, which is a period of 156 years? Hack Wilson, right? 191 runs batted in for Hack Wilson. You've heard of him, right? Who had the highest, or who had the most hits in one season during that time? George Sisler, 257 hits in one season. Ooh. But who had the most hits out of all the Hall of Fame players? You should know that. Pete Rose, 4,256. Ty Cobb, second, 4,189. So you see, through my chapters on the decades, in each individual decade, I said who had the most hits, most runs batted in, and the highest batting average in each decade. I could tell you, but it would take me 2 hours to list all the players. Okay, so this will finish this portion of the video on baseball is a numbers game. I have 84 chapters in this book. And so I have gone so far 21 chapters. My next video, I will do chapters 22 through, well, this will be interesting, 35. There'll be 13 chapters. And I'll discuss what each chapter, analyzing these Hall of Fame players and their stats, and what I tried to do, all right? This book is available on Amazon.com. Costs a lot. I'll admit that, but it's worth it. If you're a baseball nerd like I am, you want to know? A lot of books have the stats. I do a lot of research, and I use Baseball Reference on Google as my guide to look up their numbers. Okay, so this video is the second one, episode 330. I'll continue doing this, and I'll go through all 84 chapters, and I'll give a summary. Okay? Thanks for watching. I'm out.